All right, welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chaney podcast. I am your host, Nathan Chaney, and today we're going to talk to the very first editor of a media organization and publication here. That's John Thornton. He's calling in all the way from the UK, and we're going to dive into his background and experience as a journalist and editor, and maybe touch on their upcoming IntraLogisteX conference that's going on here in Miami here pretty soon, and maybe make a couple other stops along the way on the journey. So, John, welcome to the Supply Chaney podcast. Thanks for coming on today. Could you tell everyone a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Nathan. Firstly, for having me on the podcast. It's a real pleasure and a real honor to be a guest. Yes, so to give you a brief overview, John Thornton, editor-in-chief here at Akabo Media, which is a global business-to-business publishing and events company. We're based in London, and we're a content service provider at heart. So we really pride ourselves on providing content to the logistics, supply chain, robotics, automation, urban transportation, tolling industries. And we do that through a variety of ways, I suppose. We have a content division which comprises editorial. So we produce magazines for the sectors that I've just mentioned. We have three titles within the stable. We have Logistics Manager, which has been going for over 40 years now here in the UK, which makes it one of, if not the oldest business to business publications of its kind for this sector. We also have Robotics and Automation magazine and City Transport and Traffic Innovation magazine as well. And they're all slightly linked in some way or another. There are quarterly titles, and in addition to that, we also organize a range of events that comprise exhibitions, conferences, and awards for each of those sectors that I've just mentioned, primarily IntraLogisteX and the Supply Chain Excellence Awards, both of which we are very excited to be hosting over in Miami, Florida next month.
Excellent. Well, that's really interesting, and I think the thing that just stood out is that that it's only 40 years, because I know I've spent time in London, and whenever I think of anything in Europe, I think, man, everything there is so much older than it is here in the U.S. And that things have existed for so much longer there, it seems. So I'm surprised that a dedicated publication to logistics and stuff would only be 40 years.
Only
Interesting.
40.
I do want to dive in more into the media side of the house, but I would like to kind of understand and learn a little bit more about John Thornton, the person. So, could you tell us a little bit about your sort of personal story?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in London, moved all over the country, kind of settled down in Nottingham, which is the kind of middle of England, the East Midlands region, home of Robin Hood, if you're familiar with that tale. Um, but yeah, I've been living in London now for many years. Most of my career has been based either in London or in and around London. I'm married. I've got two kids. I've got a son and a daughter. Yeah, and I've been a working journalist all of my career.
So, kind of like growing up, I try to ask this question. Like, clearly, you've forged this career in journalism. It seems like, but can you talk a little bit about growing up, and like maybe what did you want to be when you were growing up in Nottingham? And
Mm.
was did you want to be Robin Hood, or a soccer football player or something?
No, strangely, weirdly, I always wanted to be a journalist. I kind of knew it from the age of about 10, 11 years old. I have memories of reading the daily newspaper that would be delivered through our mailbox, and I just knew that's what I wanted to do. I couldn't really, I wouldn't be able to explain why exactly. I was just drawn to newspapers, and I thought, yeah, this is something that I think I'd like to do. And I just stuck with that all the way through high school, and then into college, university. And it never really, I never wavered from that. It was just, I was kind of dead set that journalism in some form or another was what I wanted to pursue.
Wow, that's I really I'm a little bit jealous of those folks that got to have a vision and understand what they kind of wanted to do with their life from such an early age, because you were able to kind of have this great snowball effect and have this trajectory and focus as you went through school. Do you remember like one of those first experiences like that where that you can recall that it was like the light bulb went off and it was like, you mentioned reading, but did you ever like write any? Were you ever one of those kids that kind of like wrote your own
Mm.
newspaper for the neighborhood kind of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, because I was trying to get my foot in the door, relatively early on. So I used to write for free for our local newspaper, the Nottingham Evening Post, and back in those days, I had these grand designs of being a music journalist and working for Enemy magazine, Melody Maker, those types of titles. And so I used to go out to gigs in Nottingham, and I would just write reviews, and I would send them in to the local newspaper. And I just kept doing that until I got a reply, and finally. Simon Edmonds, the editor of the entertainment supplement within the publication, he did respond to one of my emails eventually, and I think I probably just pestered him so much that he kind of just gave in. And he said, "Well, you're obviously keen on doing this. Do you want to make this more of a regular thing?" And yeah, I started doing that again. It was just purely for free, but I, I knew that I had to start building up a portfolio or a body of work that I could then use and take with me when I was applying for other jobs or trying to get other opportunities. So I did that for, as I was kind of going through high school. I was doing that. So yeah.
That's not a bad, that's actually a really cool idea. Like if you were going to pick some area to specialize in as a young person from a journalism perspective, why not pick something fun that's going to give you some adventure
Well,
and have a little fun at the same time?
yeah, it was music because it's one of my biggest loves, passions in life, and still to this day, a bit of a music aficionado, and that I think
Okay.
that's kind of what really kind of set me off on that path initially, of being a music journalist. And I remember having literally cutting out all of the press clippings, all of the reviews that I would write and they would print in the newspaper. I would cut them out with a pair of scissors and I'd stick them into this like briefcase portfolio. Um, I think my mum still got that probably in the attic at her house in Nottingham still somewhere.
That's a nice story.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like a theme in journalism? And I think maybe in some particular industries where you kind of have to do things kind of for free and build this portfolio before you can really
Mm.
show your work. Is that kind of a constant? And does that still exist today in the
Yeah,
industry?
I think so. I mean, certainly that was absolutely the case when I was coming through, and I imagine it's probably the same, if not more competitive these days for graduates who are trying to make their way in the media landscape. Yeah, you have to do whatever it takes really to kind of get your foot in that door, as I mentioned earlier, and to get noticed and really to create opportunities for yourself. It's a super competitive industry, there's, especially now in this age where you've got, well, podcasts and bloggers and vloggers, and it's not just writers anymore. So yeah, to your point, I think it has got more competitive today. And I imagine graduates today coming through, journalism graduates, are probably having to do the same thing by offering their services and their talents and their skills for free, but the mediums and the platforms have probably evolved over that time.
Sure, you make a good point that I'm an operations guy in the logistics and supply chain world my whole life, and just as of late in the last year or two, started to morph into this media type of play. And so I've gotten to do exactly what you've mentioned, which is, I used to do everything for free. I'd go to conferences and video and everything. I was on my own dime. But I kind of quickly realized that I had to have that portfolio of experience and to be able to show my style and what I've done and what I'm capable of in order to kind of move the needle forward on making it a career of sorts and making it a business.
Mhm.
Um, so you talked about music. Could you talk like, are you a avid listener of music or do you play any instruments yourself?
So I used to play the bass guitar again when I was kind of in high school. Me and my friends had a band, as most teenagers do. We didn't really write our own stuff; it was really just covers. But it was fun, and we would get together and practice, every Thursday over at my friend's house whilst his parents were still at work. We probably really annoyed and bugged the neighbors. But it was just a kind of traditional garage band setup. So drummer, bassist, guitarist. Didn't really have a singer, but that didn't really bother us at the time. And we would just jam out and play covers just for fun. I've over the years haven't played the bass as much as I used to, but I still love listening. I'm really collecting music, so I collect a lot of vinyl, a lot of records. I kind of made I was fortunate enough to be able to get a great, kind of old-fashioned record vinyl player. I had my eye on, really investing in a proper one for many years, and they're not cheap, these things. And so I, kind of waited until I could afford to get the one I really wanted. And since then, I've just been buying vinyl, just kind of amassing a kind of growing library of records.
I like it. I don't. I've seen a few folks on LinkedIn kind of post their album of the week. Like
Oh,
specifically, I know one guy who like
yeah,
every Friday take a picture of an album cover and say, "This is what I'm listening to today," kind of thing.
yeah.
So, well, that's cool. That's really fun. Um, let's talk about like what happened in your experiences after university
Mm.
and through kind of like your career. If you could kind of walk us through what your career has looked like over the years.
Yeah, definitely. So once I finished university, I got my degree in journalism from Lancaster University. During that time, I was applying for internships and for jobs, primarily in London because that's where the opportunities are. And eventually got an internship working for a record label, to do some press office press release writing. So not journalism, more the kind of other side of the coin. But I did that for about 6 months, and then I kind of got my first break was working again, not actually in journalism, but within music PR. I got a job at a independent music PR firm who had existed for a long time, and I thought, oh, so I have managed to kind of get my foot in the door here in the music industry. It might not have been journalism, but it was still within the industry. And then the global crash happened, and I was made redundant, as a lot of people kind of working in entertainment were at that time. I think it was one of the biggest hit sectors, and I was really stubborn. I remained in London for as long as I possibly could. I was determined to remain here and find another job within the music industry. And one day I spoke to an old school friend from Nottingham who had actually moved out to Vietnam about a year and a half prior to this. And he said, "Hey, man, come out. You've got nothing to lose. Just see what happens." He was living in Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon at the time. And I thought, okay, yeah, maybe I will. I hadn't really thought about that before because I was so set on a career in London. So I hadn't really ever kind of had that desire to explore opportunities, especially out that far flung. So I did what most people who move out to that part of the world do. I kind of did an English language kind of teaching class, to get a qualification to go teach English out there, which I subsequently never used. But when I did go out there, I was there for 3 years in total. So I kind of moved over there from 2009 to 2012. And in that time, I kind of started freelancing for a couple of local magazines that were owned, ironically, by two British guys. They'd set up competing magazines. They used to work together. They had a falling out, and then started started their own publications. One called Asia Life, and one called The Word, Ho Chi Minh City. And so, unbeknown to me that these two owners had had any kind of history or falling out, I, like most people, thought, oh, I'm going to freelance in as many places as I could. So I started freelancing for both of those publications. And it was The Word that offered me a full time role as initially as a staff writer and then as a deputy editor. In and amongst that, I was also freelancing for a commercial real estate company called CBRE, and that really was just a kind of a freelance gig, editing research reports for the research department within CBRE Vietnam. And that was really just to make some extra cash alongside what I was doing at the Word. There was fortunately no conflict with that with that one. So yeah, as I say, I was there for 3 years, and then I met somebody, and she had designs on moving back to the UK. So I think it would have been in October 2012, made the decision to leave Vietnam with a view to restarting life in the UK. And in that time, I was applying for jobs everywhere, and I thought, okay, I probably don't want to try and go back into the music industry. Kind of, things had changed a little bit, and I kind of got a bit older. And I, didn't want to be out as late as I used to go out. And I thought, let's try and find something a bit more stable. And then I came across business to business journalism, or B2B journalism, which I don't think anybody ever really starts out as a journalist thinking they're going to get into B2B, business to business journalism, but you find yourself in it. You kind of walk into, you fall into it almost. And so I applied for a job for a publishing and events company down in a town called Dorking, which is in Surrey, the county of Surrey here in England. And I got a job as an assistant editor, and I was working on primarily a load of automotive engineering technology magazines. So there was a stable of magazines down there, which, one was looking at engine and powertrain tech, the other was looking at crash testing technology, another one was looking at the testing and development and the R&D side of building and making cars. Another one on vehicle dynamics. So really kind of niche stuff, which is what B2B journalism is really truly all about. It's, you can be working on a range of incredibly esoteric subjects and titles. And yeah, that's, I joined them in April of 2013, I believe. And I was there for 6 years, and in that time, kind of progressed through and became an editor in my own right. So some of those titles that I was an assistant or deputizing on, I took on myself as the editor, as my editor also progressed up through the ranks within the business. And that was really, where I've been in B2B journalism ever since. And as I say, I don't think anyone ever intends to become a B2B journalist, but once you're in it, it's kind of, it kind of gets its claws into you.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe it's a little more stable, and rather than being like B2C, which can be so much more volatile, I guess B2B can be a little bit more
Yeah.
steady and consistent. So then that was your last step before being, doing what you're doing now.
Mm.
So could you kind of like tell us a little bit about what your role is like and what you do and what you all do at Akabo Media?
Yeah, sure thing. So I've been with Akabo Media for just 6 years now. So at the start of August was my 6 year anniversary at the company. And when I first joined from my previous place, I joined as an editor. Initially to look after the two quarterly titles that I mentioned at the top of this, Robotics and Automation and City Transport and Traffic Innovation magazine. So I was responsible for those two quarterly magazines, the websites, and the associated events that were connected to those brands. So we had exhibitions and conferences for those brands, and the magazine supported those through content delivery. And so that's, started off on that, and then over time my remit has expanded to today I oversee, well, the entire content division of the business. So that's editorial, that's the magazines, that's our conference producers, the conference production side, and then we also have a research division, Aurora Insights. So I also oversee that team from a content perspective. So looking at the, what do we, what type of market research reports are we looking to, write and put out into the markets that we serve. So that all of that sort of falls under my remit now as editor in chief here at Akabo Media.
I see. I appreciate you, and there's one distinct thing I think that I see when I hear your story now is that you know how many months you made a stop for at each stop, and what year and what month happened, and I don't have that talent, so that ability to recall such good timeline precision. So anyway, so kudos to you for that skill.
I think it's nature of the job with being deadline driven. So I've always got dates for deadlines kind of etched into my head or behind my eyes.
I suppose that makes sense then. Yeah, it's part of the business. And then so it's kind of fun how you talked about the move, how no one really grows up saying I want to be a B2B media editor. And I hear that a lot in the logistics and supply chain industry, that no one really goes to school and come out and say I want to work for a trucking company or something of that effect, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like you just don't hear a lot about this sort of thing growing up or in college and stuff. It's always seems to be B2C because you're so used to being a consumer that you
Yes.
really kind of seem to only look at business from a consumer's lens, it seems.
Sure.
And then so everyone kind of just trickles and moves over and discovers this B2B side of the world.
Mhm.
So pretty cool. Then did you ever imagine, call it 10 years ago,
Mm.
that your remit would be as broad as it is today? Like, do you feel like
No.
this was
Yeah.
luck? This was hard work? Or like, how did you get to this spot?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, no, I did. I never really thought my remit or my role would be as broad as it is today. And I guess that's what's driven that change is partly changes within the sector itself and how media is consumed as well, not just by consumers in a B2C context, but within a B2B context as well. So when I was starting out at within B2B, the emphasis was still very, very much on print and website. We did have websites that were attached to those publications, but the importance that was placed on those websites was next to nothing. They looked really rudimentary. They were super basic. It was something that the editors did not in their spare time, but if you had a bit of free time post deadline, you might spend an hour or two updating the site, sort of thing. So that was very much the landscape when I was an assistant editor. Yeah, at the time. And yeah, when I joined Akabo Media, one of the great things that I've learned since I've been here over the 6 years is that I've been doing stuff I could never have imagined doing. So I remember when I first joined the business, Stephen Brooks, our managing director, said to me pretty early on, "So John, you're going to be chairing the Road User Charging Conference for us over in Brussels, which is a big global conference that has been running for 22 23 years now, and it's all about tolling and congestion pricing and various forms of charging motorists to use highways or motorways or any kind of strip of road." And I said, yeah, okay. And thinking in my head, I've never chaired a conference in my life. And yeah, it was one of those experiences that I was pretty terrified initially about doing, but it made sense because it's content still. So yes, it might not be writing a feature in a magazine, but it's just content delivered in a different way. And I think once I kind of wrapped my head around that and was a little less kind of narrow in focus in terms of what I thought a B2B journalist does, yeah, kind of got the bug out of it. Not that I particularly, I don't love being on stage, but it's quite you do get that adrenaline rush when you're up there, especially if you're moderating a pretty fiery discussion between two or three or four different thought leaders on a particular topic, and you're having to referee that and moderate that. And it's a real art form I've found over the years, chairing a conference. You've got to kind of keep things moving, have one eye on the time, one eye on your panelist or your speaker, and then another eye somehow on the audience. And you're really kind of having to facilitate the kind of perpetual motion of that event, from the start to the finish for 1, 2, 3 days, however long it may be. So that's been something that I never thought I'd see myself doing. Hosting webinars is something else that, again, purely because of the time and where the technology was, it just wasn't something that was done when I was coming through the ranks. And it's really kind of, I guess, since the pandemic, where webinars and kind of online virtual events they've really come to the fore. And so that's something that, again, I've done a lot of over the last 6 years, which I never thought I would do. There's been a lot of learning. I could really credit the business and Stephen Brooks, who's really kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone over that time to try these new things, and kind of bringing something out of myself that I didn't really know was there or didn't think I could do necessarily.
Talking to folks in the journalism and media space, especially folks that have been doing it for a minute, it's been interesting to hear that type of story and evolution of the art, which is used to be all paper print, and then, as you just were mentioning, then websites came into being, and that was really important. And now it seems like we've moved into the next step of nobody really has time to take in a full 750 word article. This needs to be in 200 words or less, or 114 characters or whatever. Yeah. And I need my information and knowledge very, very fast, delivered to me in the most convenient way possible, and engaging and fun, and communicate a point. And can you kind of tell us just real briefly, like how you see this like kind of change and evolution of delivering content, and what's your take on it right now?
Well, it's my take is that it's inevitable. You cannot stop progress, and you either keep up with the times, or you don't. And there's real clear kind of clear choice there, I suppose. What's really interesting, though, for us within the B2B landscape is that there is still an appetite for print alongside these kind of more these faster content delivery methods, primarily digital. We still print all of our magazines. And one of the things that we're really proud of at Akabo Media with the logistics manager is we're one of the few B2B publications in the space that not only has an audited and verified circulation, it's one of the largest. So we have a verified circulation of 10,600 plus. So that's something that we're really proud of, and something that we don't just want to protect, but we want to keep growing. But in addition to that's the monthly print title. With that, we understand that that's not our only way of communicating with our clients and with our audience. So as I say, webinars have been a real big win for us. The Logistics Manager brand averages about 2 a month, which is great, and that was something that was born out of the pandemic, but is something that has actually maintained over that time. So we're doing more newsletters than ever before. We've also branched out internationally, obviously, because I'm talking to you today, into the US, into the Middle East and Africa market, and also the Asia Pacific market. We are taking the Logistics Manager brand, the IntraLogisteX brand, and the Supply Chain Excellence Awards brand kind of out of the UK, and we're just pushing it out there to the world, in effect. And so we have to embrace these other ways of communicating and delivering content to ever growing readership and circulation.
Yeah, excellent. Let's dive in a little bit more into the event side and the IntraLogisteX brand, which is my first exposure to you all and what I kind of know you as the most. I mean, can you talk a little bit about the history of that show, or the shows that you have there in the logistics space, in there in the UK, and then kind of like your journey to open that show up here in the U.S.?
Absolutely. So if I start with IntraLogisteX, maybe. So when Stephen Brooks, managing director of Akabo Media, kind of brought the company into being back in 2011, I believe, he kind of purchased a number of products and titles from previous companies that owned Logistics Manager, the Supply Chain Excellence Awards. And then at that time, Intralogistics didn't actually exist. It was a series of regional warehousing exhibitions that took place in the north, south, and kind of Midlands part of England called Logistics Link. And over time, Stephen decided with the team that was there at that time to unify those three regional shows into a national show called Intralogistex. And we've been doing Intralogistex in its current guise for the last 10 years, and it really has now become the UK's premier annual showcase of future supply chain and warehouse technology. So we've been doing that for 10 years, and we thought at the same time as looking at the supply chain excellence awards, for example, which in that event has been running for 29 years. And we're a really ambitious company here at Akabo Media, and we thought, what can we do outside of the UK? Because the Supply Chain Excellence Awards are not only one of the oldest awards here in the UK. They're really one of the biggest, and a bit like with Intralogistics, that event has become the biggest celebration of supply chain excellence. And so we're thinking, what else can we do with these brands that we built over the years? And the kind of natural progression we felt was to take these events into the USA, into the Middle East and Africa, and into the Asia Pacific regions. So if I talk purely about the US, for a moment, this is our second year running both Intralogistex and the Supply Chain Excellence Awards. Both of these events debuted last year in 2024. And it was a bit with any launch. There's an amount of uncertainty. You're entering a brand new market. You're never quite sure how the market, how the sector's going to take you. Especially when you've got other events, US-based events that are kind of well established there. But we took a chance, and despite even the hurricanes, impacting the Florida region at that time, we still managed to put on two maiden events in the Miami area. So they went so well that we're back again this year, which is incredibly exciting for us.
That's I appreciate the history lesson and the background, and that's pretty cool to see the evolution, right? And kind of having a vision and tapping into a trend. I mean, it seems to me I'm spending a good amount of time focused on events in the logistics and supply chain space, and it just seems like it continues to increase in volume. The number and variety of events that marketing teams have to choose from and attendees have to choose from. And maybe as we kind of just wrap up here, like any kind of sort of last bits and details about this year's specific event, keynote presentations, kind of the agenda for this year's event in Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. So the two events that we've got happening in Miami, they take place back to back. So we've got first up, we have the Supply Chain Excellence Awards USA that take place on Tuesday, the 16th of September, over at the Emmanuel Luxury Venue on Miami Beach, and that's going to be a cocktail gala and dinner entertainment, and where we announce the winners live for the first time. And that's attended by senior supply chain and warehousing professionals from across operations, engineering, automation, and at an IT and WMS kind of level. It's a really kind of cool big event. We've got over 70 shortlisted finalists across 20 different categories. So it's going to be it's going to be a really great night of celebration, celebrating innovation, celebrating resilience, and a great kind of networking opportunity to meet senior leaders from across US logistics, procurement, and operations, and really recognizing the projects that move the needle. Some of the brands that are on that shortlist, they're major companies. They include the likes of PepsiCo and AutoStore and Geek Plus America and Smith and Nephew. There's some really cool brands associated with the Supply Chain Excellence Awards USA. We've also got a fantastic independent judging panel that have determined our winners. So that, again, that's something we're really proud of. The awards are totally independent. We don't choose the winners. Our judges choose the winners, and they comprise senior leaders from the likes of Apple, Ford, Dr. Pepper, Walmart, Nike, Procter and Gamble. So it's when the winners are announced, they are truly well deserved. So that's the first event that takes place in Miami, and then the very next day we have IntraLogisteX USA that takes place on the Wednesday and Thursday, which is the 17th and 18th of September, and that's over at the Miami Beach Convention Center, and that's a free to attend exhibition with over 40 conference sessions, lots of live technology demos and product launches. The event itself, we try and ensure that it really does cover the supply chain end to end. So we've kind of split that event into five zones, if you will, comprising warehousing, robotics and automation, software and IT, delivery, packaging, anything that help make operations more efficient, more agile, and more accurate. I mentioned the 40 plus conference sessions we have. That's across two theaters, one looking at logistics and then one looking at technology. And that's all designed to be delivered by seasoned practitioners that deliver practical tools that our visitors to the event can apply pretty much immediately. We've got some great exhibitors at this year's show, the likes of Cardex, Locus Robotics, Geek Plus, who I've mentioned before, Purdue Robotics, Logistics Reply. Yeah, we've got a heck of a kind of exhibitor lineup, and we're just really excited to be back in Miami.
Excellent. I appreciate kind of the overview, and looking forward to the success of this year's conference here in Miami, and maybe on another episode we get together and chat about what you all have in store for the other markets that you're opening up in. And I've enjoyed this chat here today to get to learn more about you, John, and your story, and learn a bit more about the journalism, the art and science thereof. And any last words as we just close up here today?
Yeah, I would say, if you are in the Miami area next month, from the 16th of September through to the 18th, then, I would absolutely recommend coming to either or both events. The IntraLogisteX is free to attend. All you have to do is register in advance at www.intralogistexusa.com for your free visitor pass. So if you are in the area, by all means, please do come and join us.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks for joining here today, John, and talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks, Nathan. Real pleasure.